Hey Kevin, how's it going? Thanks for joining the Deep Edge
It's
podcast. How's it going?
it's going fantastic, Ray. Thanks so much for having me here today. It's the first with you.
Oh, it is. It's interesting because we go way back. I remember you reached out to me, God, I don't know if it was 10 or 12 years ago when you were doing some research and standardizations on mobile backhaul. So it's good to reconnect there.
I think it was even more than 12 years.
Okay, so you're
Well, we're all
saying
getting old.
you're saying I
Anyway,
had hair, right? So
yeah, and
uh,
mine was black.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So we're in the same boat there. Now, recently, if we look at the history of the MEF, it has some kind of like really good legacy associated with carrier Ethernet, some of the work you're doing with LSO and the whole API work. But been this whole rebranding and vision and stuff like that. Maybe if we can just jump right into it, what were the core market shifts that you saw kind of like driving that decision, Kevin?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a progressive thing. Obviously, we had the long history in carrier Ethernet, and then we had a sort of a fork in the road around 10 or 11 years ago, where we started to introduce automation and LSO to our work plan to automate services. At the same time, we were doing more standards work with other service types, layer one, three and up into security and so on. So you had a broader portfolio of work. Ultimately, we sort of moved that forward towards really seeing that work as being building blocks for network as a service. And then you saw us kind of refocus around NaaS. So I think we had to kind of get to that point where there was a real clear new, view and vision of where we were going. And it was really the right time to pull the trigger on a rebrand. At the end of the day, I think there were a lot of obviously companies that are in our ecosystem today know what we're doing, what we've done, the value we bring, and where we play. But there's just a lot of people out there that still saw us sort of back in the
Mm,
carrier Ethernet days,
good
and
point.
nothing wrong with that because
Yeah.
it's quite relevant. But as we broaden our ecosystem out, we thought we needed, a new brand to do that.
Yeah, no, I like the name and stuff like that, Amplify. So I think it's
Yes.
it's really strong. And I think I wish honestly more companies would reconsider because I mean with some of the things changing, right? You see a lot of people moving to cloud, multi-cloud, AI, automation, even how they position themselves needs to be recalibrated. So definitely excited going into that. Now, when we look at Kevin, the term and the new part of it, right? There's a part of it that's an ecosystem and collaboration, more than just a service provider, right? You're getting involved with and correct me if I'm wrong, anytime with enterprise customers, you have Sunil kind of helping with that. You have some stuff with cloud providers, data center. How do you plan to kind of foster this collaboration that can scale with kind of this eco partner environment, would you say?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, we have a long history of sort of successfully enabling collaboration and going way
Hmm.
back where, the vendors and the providers around carrier Ethernet, everybody adopted the standards, worked together, created this kind of global layer two fabric. And, we carried that on over time. So it became critical when you think about network as a service. One essential there is that you require an ecosystem to deliver it, right? You have a
Correct.
retail service provider selling to enterprise. There's a whole ecosystem behind it if you're going to deliver NaaS on a global basis. So, what we looked at was, do we have most of that ecosystem together already? We had good representation. Do we have a track record to do that? And how do we evolve beyond that? So I think, and that frankly, the whole issue of ecosystem collaboration is 100% central
Hmm.
to what we're all about. But it really takes a formula to do that, right? You have to look at, if you're going to bring an ecosystem together, who are the players and who do you have, who you don't have. A great
Right.
example of us taking a very specific action was bringing enterprises in. We
Yeah.
didn't want to build, the NaaS ecosystem without the end customer being there,
Correct.
right? And
Yeah.
we did that in a very calculated way. And so more recently, you've seen system integrators, we've seen data center providers, all the different types of technology providers, service providers, hyperscalers, and there are other pure play technology companies that we haven't even heard of that will ultimately position themselves in the NaaS space.
Mhm.
and be able to join this. The other thing though is and that's a little bit trickier. It's you need an engagement model to you need the right model to engage these different ecosystem players. So
Right.
they want to get different things out of this collaboration. And some people want to go in deep. Some want to be sort of casual participants. We have technical participants. We have product participants. And the model has to be able to accommodate these different personas. So we're in the process of kind of evolving that. It's not all
Mhm.
done, it's not all baked, but we know who we need at the table in terms of the types of companies, the types of people, and we want to make sure that they, ultimately achieve their business objectives. And it's just always a work in progress with these nonprofits.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And one thing I think that I should have mentioned, add, is that you're very welcoming to analysts as well, and the honest feedback and playing a key role in some of your events and part of that. So that's always good to see from that side of it there.
Yeah, and in fact, you brought that up because last year we were at our Global NaaS event in October when we were shaping the program. I specifically said to the team here that, the analysts are part of the ecosystem. You've got expertise that you're bringing to the table. You've got intel that you're bringing to the table. You're not just there to report on what's coming out of this thing. You're providing input. So we wanted you guys into the program to the message to this community, right? So you're bang on there.
Yeah, no, I think it's from an analyst perspective, those that attend it like myself, not only do we get a lot of value, we do see that it's a collaborative discussion, which I'm sure every analyst that has attended will agree with that. Now, one thing I want to make sure is when we look at like some of the things that you're doing, right? You get involved in different use cases. You mentioned security, you mentioned NaaS, and I know in things related to like SASE, right? There's this certification type standards. But when I really look at it, when I was like a former CTO, I look at those things like how do they help me reduce my risk of making that decision, right? So those are very important factors and stuff like that. So when we look at Mplify, is that something that you're going to continue to do and clarify? Because as I go into NaaS, right? We can talk about the definitions and stuff like that. And I remember going like to 10 different meetings at one of the show. I think it was Mobile World Congress, Kevin, and they were like 9 different definitions of that. So the need to have this collaboration and these standards and certification and have what I call this trusted transparency where there's certification definition, I think it's needed in developing whatever framework. It's something that I hear from service providers and enterprises as well as OEM to make their job easier. But it all leads to the reducing the risk of innovation. I mean, do you agree with that? Is that still part of your
Yeah.
vision moving forward?
Absolutely. It's been a big part of our kind of, program for many, many years, and we will certainly evolve and enhance those things. I think when you look at certifications, you look at it maybe with a couple of different value propositions, right? One
Mhm.
would be if you're thinking about maybe SASE certification,
Right.
that's more of a trust play, right? You're
Correct.
trying to
Yeah.
provide transparency whether it's to the service provider buying technology from the security vendors that the pre-testing is done, they meet these industries, whether it's a standard or required functionalities, et cetera, that the industry expects. There's been some third-party testing because these organizations spend a fortune on time, time and money on testing. So there's that level of transparency, but ultimately out to the end user, whether it's the vendor selling to the end user or through a service provider, that there's a third party there that's provided, the testing in a whole bunch of different areas that raises the comfort level of the end user, so they get what they expect to get. I think when you get into the NaaS ecosystem side of things, then the big story becomes interoperability.
Oh, okay.
Where,
Mhm.
look, I want to plug into this thing, and that's where if you think about APIs, standard APIs,
Yeah.
non-standard APIs are just not interoperable with anybody else,
Correct.
right? And so whether that's down below the API level, like a layer two, services that we were doing for many years, we had interoperable services that allowed the community to form a global, Ethernet footprint, right?
Right.
And then as you move up into other areas, including APIs, interoperability is the big play. So, you know, again, it's different perceived benefits depending on who you are as kind of the consumer of those types of things.
Yeah, no, that's great. It makes a lot of sense now. Early on, you mentioned AI, right? And there's a lot of situations depending on where you are in that journey, from either service providers and enterprise. It seems like having to understand, the proper use cases associated with AI and automation, because there's kind of like overlap in there. I'm doing more and more deep analysis into like agentic AI and getting what I call a sanity check on what's real and that type of stuff like that. When you look at the role AI is playing, whether it's NaaS as a service or security or SASE or SD-WAN, some of those areas, how's Mplify helping in that process, or is it developing the use cases, setting up these committees to be able to reduce the risk or interoperability? I mean, how aggressive are you with the whole AI story
Yeah, no,
into
it's
this?
it's a great question. Well, firstly, our great CTO Pascal Menezes
Yeah.
recently refreshed our technical strategy, and he took about 6 months to really kind of
Hmm.
and within that is to really build out our AI positioning.
Okay.
Uh, at a very high level, we look at things two ways. One, and where we play and where we don't play. Where we don't play is the area of AI for networks. So the notion of using
Okay.
AI to optimize network performance, you know, managing how the traffic is
Hmm.
carried across, everything to do with network
Sure.
optimization using AI. That's more of a network management type function. Um, we're more of networks for AI, the opposite to that.
Okay.
So you think about, as you pointed out, network as a service for AI. Network as a service has many characteristics that would be required for AI, right? You
Correct.
need high speed elastic bandwidth, you need application performance, you're going to need security, um, and then you're going to need consumption models, right?
Right.
To for an enterprise to be to be able to buy some AI type service. And so we're more focused there. And the key element um, of work that we've already done that can be highly leveraged for AI is our APIs.
Okay.
So our APIs were really kind of built in a forward-looking way in that they can be used to sort of procure or
Hmm.
onboard, uh, a wide variety of services. So an enterprise might be buying an SD-WAN offering from a service provider, but they could also, with the same APIs, buy GPU as a service,
Right.
right? So these providers are looking at, they're trying to figure out how to monetize their assets. What type of AI-oriented offerings are they trying to, do they need to bring out to meet enterprise demands? And so we come along with something that's quite off the shelf that can be used for sort of very simple use cases, like
Okay.
an enterprise buying, you know, some kind of connectivity on demand
Hmm.
via and using those same APIs for, more advanced, AI as a service type capabilities, right? So that's kind of a quick way of looking at it. So yeah, I think what it has us doing though is to really make sure that we're able to articulate these new use cases.
Right.
They may be use cases that are specific to AI, they're NaaS use cases, they could be use cases which we're going to embark on shortly, which is quite interesting, which show new innovative use cases for carrier Ethernet,
Okay.
24 years old now,
Nice.
and
I
they're
know.
still
Amazing,
very,
right?
yeah, well, exactly. I mean,
Now
400 gig
I've heard that
plus,
term and I've used it.
elastic.
Never bet against Ethernet, and it's still
I
to
know
this
it's just
date.
and it's crazy, and these guys, these wonderful volunteers, these technical guys we had building this stuff and leading this for so many years. They had the foresight to build so many optional capabilities
Yeah.
against so many requirements into that. Um, and who knows? I don't think we have a lot of active work going on in that area right now. But
Mm.
if someone comes along and says we need to we need to change the certification for our carrier Ethernet to accommodate some, more stringent AI
Sure.
characteristics, we'll do that, right?
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. No, I mean, a part that you touch on, part of that I should have mentioned is that at the event and some of the stuff you do, it isn't just some of the things associated with the interoperability, the use case. When I attended the GNE, you also balance it where, oh, here's the business case or the business value that this particular use case, whether there's an ass or something else, which I kind of like because you're able to marry the two. And I think in many cases it helps accelerate the decision cycle because engineers sometimes tend to be deep into the weeds and come out and say, does this make business sense? So not just doing technology for technology's sake, doing technology that has an outcome that's aligned with the executive staff and the overall mission of the company, I think is good.
Yeah, and I think what we tried to do certainly last year at our Global NaaS event and this upcoming year was to bring a greater enterprise perspective.
Yeah.
Um, and it was fun to hear, interesting to hear some of these guys speak, saying, hey, I just heard this presentation from somebody and that individual representing an enterprise saying, I wouldn't buy I wouldn't buy that stuff. I wouldn't buy,
Right.
that consumption model stuff. It all sounds really nice, but quite frankly, my finance people don't like it. We like to stick with our vanilla ways. So,
Right.
um, but that said, that some of the initiatives that have been driven by our enterprise leadership committee, whether it's purely business driven to solve real problems that exist today through automation and collaboration amongst a NaaS community, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're all guilty of that over
Yeah, we are too. I
in
mean,
this
yeah,
world, the
yeah,
technology world, been in forever. You're trying to come up with the latest greatest thing, but we're trying to be end user focused.
yeah. No, it's a good point there. Maybe, Kevin, I know you're busy. Just close with you mentioned the G&E event, which I'm looking forward to attend. I think it's in November
Yes.
this year in Dallas.
Yep.
What should some of the attendees expect from that? If you're able to share that, so let me know.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, fundamentally, what I always wanted to do with the event is make sure that it's actually a representation of the state of the industry. If you go
Okay.
there as a participant, you will hear from this different stakeholders in the NaaS community, where they're at today, what do their offerings look like, their technologies, their vision for the future, and all of that. I think though that what we try to do is to ensure that we're showing real developments.
Right.
And so we're expecting more demonstrations of real NaaS capabilities. When we had a member event in London, we called it a member summit. It was a couple of months ago. The in our conference day, the most interesting um, component of the agenda was user stories or use cases. So we had sort of a rapid fire of use cases. Some are just use cases around using, APIs amongst different stakeholders doing different things. Some of them were more pure NaaS. So I think we want to bring that into the event as much as possible in the
Okay.
main conference, into demonstration areas. We also have some breakouts, sort of an increasing number of sort of topic focused breakouts. So
Okay.
real things that are going on versus just a bunch of people talking on, panels and so on, which is
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But got to be real.
Well, good. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Kevin, thanks for joining the podcast. I appreciate it.
I will look forward to seeing you at G&E in November, and thanks for having me.
You got it. With Kevin, this is Ray Mota. Thanks for joining this edition of the Deep Edge podcast.